Damien Cooke, I'm from Beach Break Brewing, and if you're watching this video, then you're probably wanting to know how to reculture some yeast from a bottle of Cooper's Pale Ale. It's the only way to get that real Aussie Pale Ale taste, whether you're using a kit and kilo or whether you're using one of our Schmoopers Schmale Ale all-grain work kits. So it's really easy to do, it's quite fun actually. It involves us drinking a fair few stubbies of Cooper's. So without any further ado, to the kitchen. Okay, so we're in the kitchen, and the coolest thing about making a Cooper's yeast starter, or stealing yeast as I like to call it, is that you can use things that you would ordinarily use in your brewing. So we've got 2 litres of water in a clean sterilised pot, 150 grams of light dry malt extract, and I've added in half a teaspoon of yeast nutrient. It's optional, but I'm a big fan of nutrient. It really does help your yeast growth. And that really is about all you need for the time being. So we get the light dry malt extract, bung it in the water. Now make sure your water is not hot, so don't put boiling water in here to try and save time. It's a mistake you do once and you never do again. It turns your light dry malt extract into something resembling, I don't know, liquid magma, so don't do it. So cold water, I'm going to start to bring this to the boil, and I'll see you once we're at the boil. Okay, so we're almost at the boil, and I wanted to start the video again here because this is actually quite a dangerous time when you're boiling malt extract. If you've never had a boil over, then count yourself lucky, but I can guarantee you'll have one in the future. It's really annoying, it'll really bug your partner, because you'll get sticky malt extract all over the cooktop. So when it starts to do this, and I'll grab the camera and show you, when it starts to get a little bit of a rolling boil happening, that's when you need to monitor it really closely, because the problem can be that it gets a bit of a hot break, bumps up, boils over, and goes everywhere. So just monitor it, turn the temperature down, and take it off the heat if you need to. But once it gets to the boil, you can chuck in a couple of pellets of hops if you want to. It helps with keeping unwanted nasties and bacteria out of your yeast starter while it's in its most vulnerable stages, early in fermentation. But you don't really need to. So we're going to boil this. It's just got to a rolling boil now. So we're going to boil this for 10 minutes. That'll bring it down to a volume of hopefully about 1.5 litres, which will be bang on a specific gravity of about 1040, which is perfect for yeast health in the early stages. So boil it for 10 minutes, and then I'll come back to you and we'll finish off doing the fun part of this yeast starter. Okay, so now while the malt extract is boiling away, we've got another 7 minutes or so before that reaches the completion of the 10-minute boil to sanitize the malt extract and the yeast nutrient with the fun part. So this is where we actually get the yeast from the bottle. So if you've never poured a bottle of Cooper's Pale Ale and tried to keep the sediment, this is how you do it. Just open it up, try not to touch the inside of the lid, then pour really carefully into a glass, and you'll notice the pour is pretty clear. Unless you've brought the 6-pack home in your backpack and you've cycled, you're going to get a fairly clear beer. And then stop, probably about half an inch to an inch from the bottom, with all the sediment still in the bottle. Pop the top back on, hold on to that till later, enjoy the beer, and then what we're going to end up doing is putting about 3 to 6 stubbies worth of that sediment in our end-cooled dry malt extract liquid. So that will make up our yeast starter. So cheers, probably about 5 minutes to go in this boil, and then we're ready to rock and roll with adding the yeast to the yeast starter. Okay, so we've finished the end of the boil. It's been boiling for 10 minutes. I chucked in about 5 little pellets of SARS hops, just for the hell of it. Completely optional, but I'm just a big fan of adding a little bit of hops in your yeast starter. It tends to inhibit the amount of bacteria that is likely to flourish in the very sensitive wort. So, kept it on the heat. I've got a cleaned and sanitized lid. Just going to pop that on here. I'll keep it on the heat even though I've turned it off, just to get some heat on the underside of the lid to sanitize that as well, just to make sure that everything's nice and clean on the inside of this pot. So it's finished boiling. What I'm going to do now, completely take it off the heat, and then we're going to pop it over into our sink in our little ice bath to cool it down as quick as possible. If you want to be lazy, you can actually just leave it in here and let it cool naturally over the next couple of hours, but I think it's always advisable to cool you'll work nice and quickly after you finish the boil. So we're going to put it in the ice bath and we're back in one tick. Okay, so what we have now, we've got this boiling hot malt extract, water, yeast, and a slight amount of hot mixture that we're going to put in this cold water bath in our sink. Just fits in. And then what I'm going to do, just those little gel packs, I'm just going to bung these in, get it down nice and cold as fast as we can. Okay, so everything's still covered, still sanitary. I'm just going to get this down as cold, basically to pitching temperature. When it's down to about 20 degrees-ish or so, even a bit lower than 30 degrees is fine. That's when we'll pour it into our cleaned and sanitized jug and pitch our yeast. So I'm going to sit back and have a beer for the next 5 minutes while this chills out, and I'll be back once it's down to pitching temperature. We have cooled the pot to about where we want it to be. Look, it looks like it's about 28, 30 degrees or so, which is fine. Then we've got our cleaned, meticulously cleaned and sterilized apple juice. Just tip out a little bit of sanitizer. I use Star Sands, no rinse, really nice and easy to use. Then what we're going to do, we're going to be carefully putting our cooled wort into the jug. So what I'm going to do, just going to quickly nip around over to the oven, just so I can clean the water off the bottom, because I don't want anything unsanitary, any of that sink juice dripping into our starter. So we'll just dry it off. There we go. Take this lid off and pour it in as carefully as we can. You notice a bit of hot material going in there, no big deal. Then put the lid on. What I might do, I might just give it a bit of a spray with sanitizer. This is my no-rinse sanitizer here. Pop that on. And now we're going to shake the bejesus out of it. What this does, it aerates it to give our yeast the best possible start in life. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you all by shaking this for a couple of minutes like I'm about to. I'll shut the camera off and I'll be back when we finally get to add life to our yeast starter.
Shake it, shake it, shake it. Hot God! Shake it, shake it, shake it. Hot God!
Okay, we're at our final and most fun stage of making our Cooper's yeast starter. What I've noticed, however, is I've got just a little bit too much liquid in here. Considering that I'm about to put 5 stubbies worth of sediment in here. You can really do this with about 3 stubbies, but I thought, what the hell, I drank a 6-pack, so I may as well whack in 5 stubbies. So I'm just going to tip a little bit out. Like I said, this is optional. What I'm worried about though, however, is once the yeast takes hold and we get to high krausen, all of this foam could spill out the top. So I don't want that to happen. It'd be pretty messy. So I'm just going to tip some out. Should do. And now I've shaken, like I said, the bejesus out of this yeast starter. So now the fun part, I just resuspend the yeast. Pop it in. So you can see when I'm pouring it's nice and creamy. And last one. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab some aluminium foil. We've already shaken it so it's nice and aerated. So all you really need to do now, get some aluminium foil, stick it on the top, make a nice little seal, and that's it. So that's pretty much all you need to do to make a Cooper's yeast starter. Over the next couple of days, you'll notice some bubbles starting to rise up in this solution. It'll almost fizz. Once all the bubbles stop rising, you'll notice there's a nice little creamy layer of white yeast at the bottom of your jug. Once you've done that, you can do one of two things. You can either pitch the whole thing into your Schmooper's Schmale Ale all grain work kit or your Cooper's Pale Ale tin. Or you can do what I do, which is a little bit more finicky. You can stick it in the fridge or stick it into your kegerator or wherever is nice and chilled to drop all the yeast out of suspension, decant off the top part, then resuspend all that creamy white yeast at the bottom and then pitch that into your brew. That'll minimise the amount of oxidised extract that you add into your beer and lead to probably the best result. So there we go, stealing Cooper's yeast in a couple of easy steps. Good luck, it's pretty easy, it's pretty good fun, and it means that we get to keep the convict spirit alive when we're making our Cooper's Pale Ale. So, farewell from Beach Break Brewing.